Alright guys, so I'm finally back working on the Bronco. It took a little bit just because I wasn't prepared to spend extra money on taking the heads off, the gaskets. I'm going to have to go to the machine shop to get the broken bolt out of the head. But since I already took off the heads, I'm going to be doing everything. I'm going to be doing the valve seal on there. Take those off, clean up the valves, just clean up everything, probably paint the outside. First thing I'm going to do is disassemble the head before we take it to the machine shop. First thing you want to do is label which head is which. I already scratched it in, kind of etched it. This is the left, and then the other one's going to be the right with the broken intake bolt in there. So that's the main one that needs to get worked on. But I'm going to start taking everything off and labeling everything. Right here I have a piece of cardboard. I'm going to just make some holes in there, you know, keep track of where each bolt was at and everything like that. More than likely I'm going to change these bolts out to ARP bolts, so they're going to be trashed, but just for the meantime, just keep track of everything. Let me go ahead and get started on the bolts first, and just simply put it into the cardboard. Organize the bolts. The way I have it is that this is the front, you know, so you just start from the front, and then same thing for this. This would be the front, just as long as you guys know how you have everything set up. The next thing I'm going to take off is the valves and the springs and retainers here, and I am going to be using this tool here. And this tool you could buy pretty cheap online, but basically all it does is it latches onto the spring here, and then this right here is going to push down the retainer, and you're going to be able to screw it down enough to where you'll be able to get out the keeper for the valve. And once you get out the keeper, then of course the spring retainer will come off, and the valve will be able to just drop on down. So let me go ahead and get started, and you'll see how it's done. So you get the tool, put it as far down as you can on the spring. Just make sure you get latched onto there, but even if you can't go all the ways, it's fine. Or you could even try to go a different part of the spring, like right here. That seems to work for me. And you'll just make sure the tool latches on there, and just keep it with one hand, and with the other hand start to tighten it down. It'll start to compress the spring together. Right there you can see it's compressing the spring. And now I'm going to have to hold it from the bottom, the valve, because the valve can move, but in order for me to get the keeper out, I'm going to have to make sure the valve doesn't drop. For this situation, how I'm recording, showing you guys, I'm just going to lift up the head, put a napkin underneath there to keep the valves up. See, you can see it's holding up the valve now. Alright, so if you guys saw that, I hadn't gave the tool a little smack, because sometimes the keeper and this retainer, they'll get like stuck together. So I mean, that's not really the proper way to do it, but let's see. But I mean, you know, that's just the way I did it. So get yourself a magnet so you don't have to get your fingers in there. And right here you can see the keepers. They're tapered, and they clamp onto the valve in order to keep everything together there. Make sure you save these keepers. You don't have to keep them organized, but just make sure you don't lose them. Now you're able to take off the spring retainer, and I mean, you gotta make sure this doesn't snap back, man. So I'm gonna just start to release it slowly. I mean, you could do it while it's on the valve, but just to show you to take it off. See how it just popped up right there. But there's the spring, keep track of it, and then the retainer here, so keep track of that. Now there is another way to take them off a lot faster. That's probably the most seen way how people take off the valves, put on the valves. This tool really works to put on the valves, because you got to go ahead and put those keepers in there to have it compressed. But what you can do, I know they sell a tool for it, but what you can do here is get a big socket that fits around, and then you could push down on it. You could push down, but a lot of times you're going to just need a hammer, and the hammer will shake everything and get those keepers loose. See how it took it off right there? Got the spring, retainer, and then you got the keeper. And doing it that way, sometimes the keepers might bounce out. I know the tool that they sell has like a magnet inside of there to catch the keepers for you. And here's another part of the retainer there. Now I'm going to just lift up on the head and get these valves out. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and get all the valves loose. And if you notice, the intake valve or retainer is different from the exhaust retainer, so just keep track of that. Just make sure you keep track of everything on how it was taken apart. So go ahead, take these off, and then we'll get to the right head. Everything's taken off of the head except for the valve seals. I'll take those off in a little bit. So next I'm going to take off on the right head. Now if you guys saw me, maybe you might see it on video, but sometimes I might struggle with taking some of the valves off, and I've noticed that it was either the keeper sticking onto the retainer and just had to get it unstuck, or either I had to make sure that I had enough paper towel underneath the valve so it wouldn't move. Sometimes there's a slight bit of movement, so whenever you're trying to get the socket and the extension to make everything pop off, that valve is just dropping down just a tad bit and it's not really letting it pop off. Sometimes I might use both methods just to kind of shake it loose, and then if I really got to make sure to get it down, just get those keepers off, then I'll go ahead and use the tool. But I mean, for the most part, it doesn't take long at all to get these off. So all the valves, springs, retainers, keepers are all taken out. The last thing just on the head are these seals, these valve seals. Now before, whenever I would start up the Bronco, it would have a little blue smoke upon startup. So most of the time that's going to be because of these seals, these valve seals. Whenever you shut off the car, over time the oil starts to seep through down to the valves, and then just make it a little bit oily, so upon that startup it burns off that oil. It still seeps through over time while it's running, but you don't notice it. you know, you have oil consumption, but you don't notice the blue smoke just only when you start it up. So it's going to be the valve seals. Sometimes these are real stubborn to take off, but you go and get the pliers and just try to wiggle it off and spin it and take it off. If not, probably have to get like a torch to it and start to burn it off and just get it real melted and basically take it off that way. So let me go ahead and try with the pliers. Hopefully it's not too hard. All the parts are off of the head. I have them organized. What I'm going to do here is put in some mineral spirits in the oil pan here and just start to scrub down some of the parts, some of the springs, retainers. Still not losing track of everything. Just take it off one by one, clean it, dry it up, put it back in, and just so we have some clean parts. So I didn't really put that much film of me cleaning the springs just because it's real tedious work. And for some reason on one side of the heads, it was on this side here. I believe this would be the right side. These had definitely more sludge, a lot more sludge on the springs and retainers. It wasn't real thick, but it's just coating the metal. For some reason, one side of the head had more sludge than the other side. This one, real quickly, I was able to clean it just because it didn't have none on it. But definitely, whenever I put things together, I want to make sure everything's working properly and make sure that we're getting oil on both sides of the heads, just to make sure that is not the issue. It could be another issue, possibly was just the leaking valve seals. But either way, I'll make sure everything's working properly. But now, since the springs and retainers are all cleaned up, next thing I'm going to clean up, since it's hard to clean with just like a brush and some mineral spirits, I got a wire wheel right here to help clean the valves, take off some of that carbon off of there, and I have my drill right here. So make sure to use your glove and eye protection. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a try. Hopefully it comes off pretty easy and doesn't take too long. Clean the valves on up. They're a lot cleaner than before. So the right side is dirtier than the left side, and the reason for that is because now looking at it is I could tell that the head has been taken off and they put new exhaust valves, at least because they do have a part number on them and they're a lot cleaner, have a different tint to them than the right side. Here's one of the exhaust valves that has been replaced. You could tell it's just a lot cleaner. Of course I cleaned it up, but it has a different tint on there. It still looks pretty new. It has a part number on here, 01328J-ZH. I haven't checked to see which valves these are. I'm pretty sure they're just standard replacement. I'm not sure about the intake valves because they don't have a part number on them, so I'm just going to guess that they're the same intake valves, although they do look a lot newer and fresher than the right side. The right side intake valves just have some pitting on there. Basically all of them have some pitting on the right side, but definitely this has to be addressed. So that's basically the reason why some of the springs and retainers were dirtier than the other, is because the left side has been taken off before. Pretty sure they cleaned it on up, has less miles on it than the right side. Springs, retainers, valves are cleaned up. I'm going to spend a little bit of time cleaning up the head. First thing I'm going to do is flip it on over, clean up some of the carbon underneath the head. cleaned up the heads, and as well I cleaned up the top side of the heads, just because I am going to be taking these to the machine shop. What I'm going to get done at the machine shop, I'm going to get the heads milled down just to make sure they're flat, even, and as well I'm going to be taking out that intake bolt that had broke inside of the head. I'm going to ask him about getting the valves done.